Hey everyone, welcome back. It's Louisa Tannermunson from Feel Good Astrology, and I'm joined here today once again with our good friend Alexandra Jowett from Jupiter Returns.
Hello.
Alexandra, how are you? It seems like it's been ages since we've been in contact. How are you?
Yeah, I'm really good, thank you. Yeah, got a lot of stuff behind me that I wanted to be behind me, and the timing of this new Mars cycle couldn't be better for me. Like yourself as a Scorpio rising, it's our ruling planet, and so it's like, yeah, time to start something new and really make the most of the next couple of years. Yeah. How about you?
Yeah. I feel quite the same. I'm like I don't know. It's like I've got a bee in my bonnet. I've got lots of ideas and stuff. Which is great. I've been thinking about like the last time I had the Mars Cazimi, in the same position basically, and it was the year that I left school, which is probably the same for you as well, right? Yeah.
Well, it's very interesting. It's the year I was at university, and that was when I met the man who was going to become my husband, and
Oh my
yeah, and that's the cycle that's just finished. So
that's interesting actually, because it was the year I left school, but it was the year I was meant to go to university but chose to bugger off and go and live in France.
Right.
And so I mean it was like this burst for freedom is how I think of it. It's like, I started to like decide how I was going to break free. Like freedom was quite important for me, and free my body, and I got very I don't normally pull rank on anyone and say this is who I am and this is what I'm going to do, but I was really defining myself back then. It was quite good, so I'm quite excited about it.
Perfect. Yeah, it's that real kind of need for to make something happen. Like Mars just really wants to make something happen. He just wants to get the hell on with stuff and make stuff happen in our life. So there is that feeling of like, oh, we're on the brink of I need to make something happen. And also it's about the individuality and how can I strike out in the world on my own for, in terms of our timing. And really, these Mars cycles are a rite of passage, essentially, of like, where we're going to grow up or grow a pair, find our where we're going to dig deep and find some courage.
Yeah, that's really good. Right, let's set the scene then. So in today's show, we're going to be talking about welcome. I can see we've got people watching already, so please do feel free to comment in the chat room because you can become part of this whole experience. It's a bit of a co-creation. We want to talk a little bit about Mars. Alexandra's already sort of started to say, it's our burst for freedom and it's how we get stuff moving. So we're going to have a bit of a Mars party going on. We're going to talk about some of the aspects that came up with the last one, because what we want to sort of demonstrate is how the Mars Cazimi relates to the different, for instance, we're looking at the Mars Cazimi of last time, and then the Mars opposition to the Sun, and also the aspects, because Alexandra, she's I forgot the hero's journey image I was going to put in. We were talking about the Mars Cazimi from the perspective of the hero's journey, and the fact that on every journey we have to slay some dragons, we have to face our fears, we actually face ourselves. And the Mars opposition that happens halfway through really, oh wow, we've got somebody joining us from Denmark. Cool, the Clarity of Tarot. Thank you for joining us. How are you?
Hi there.
Thanks for like saying hi. So we're going to look at how we started the last Mars Cazimi and how we faced ourselves at the time of the opposition, and talk around some of the aspects, talk about how they played out for us, so that you get the real feeling that we can understand our coding and start to predict what might happen this time, because we've got the Mars opposition for this Mars Cazimi, which is happening, crikey, when's it happening? January 2025. There's a lot of things going on with this Cazimi, aren't there? Like Mars retrograde. What else have we got going on with it, Alexandra?
The Mars retrograde is going to be the big piece, but just to wind it back a bit and just look at, essentially what is the Mars Cazimi. The meeting of Mars and the Sun is the beginning point of the synodic cycle. So it's almost like the new moon of Mars. Like
Yeah,
the
I
old
love
cycle
that.
is burned away, the new cycle is here. And what do we do at the new moon is we perhaps review the previous cycle, draw that to a close, take the goodness out of it, and kind of ditch what we don't want. And then we get our ducks in a row and we set our intentions for the new cycle. And of course, you can't really set your intentions if you don't know what it is that the whole of the cycle involves. You know,
I love that.
Viewers may watch or listen to a variety of different astrologers, and it can often be presented as, you know, the Mars Cazimi, that happened last week. That's an isolated piece of astrology and that's finished. And actually, this is a 2-year cycle. This is a big process, and it's going to be an absolute whopper. This particular one is going to be such a whopper. So we're at that threshold. We're at the new moon point where it's like, let's review that old cycle, be done with that, and let's get fired up for where we're really going to squeeze the juice out of this one.
I love that. We're also joined by Nubinette from North California. Hey, Nubinette, it's so nice to have you back. Are you at work at the moment? Nubinette sometimes tunes in at work. I love that. So should we get cracking then? I agree. You know, I love the way you're saying about, you know, intention setting. Did you set intentions for this? Did you get up early for the exact moment? How did you do it? Because it was like 5 a.m, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was 5 a.m. It felt pretty intense because my ascendant is 20 degrees Scorpio, so it's pretty close. And I've got other planets in aspect. I've got Venus and Jupiter conjunction in Pisces at 25. So they were trying. Yeah, really nice trine there. So I really felt it. And so it was just a case of working out, essentially knowing what's going to be coming up. So I wanted to look at the opposition. I wanted to look particularly between the relationship of Mars and Pluto, because you know, the new moon of Mars took place in Scorpio shortly after the new moon in Scorpio, and it's got two rulers, Mars and Pluto. And so their relationship to each other is going to be a really important part of this whole cycle. So I wanted to look at, you know, what was going on with them. And then I can sort of start to get a strategy in place of what's the best way we can meet this energy and co-create with it and meet the universe halfway with what it's trying to bring us.
Well, it's interesting you talk about that because as you so rightly pointed out to me earlier, today, Mars and Pluto are exactly in a sextile. And funnily enough, they're in a sextile in my birth chart, which I love. And of course, you know, they're both my rulers like they are for you.
Exactly.
On the day of the Cazimi, and which we'll get to, but one of the things I really like about it is like the sun's in a conjunction with Mars, but the moon later on is in an exact conjunction with Pluto. So it's like the sun and the moon, the masculine and the feminine, the dark and the light
really tuning us in
with the two rulers of Scorpio. I don't think that's just by chance. You know, it just feels like really good. So let's get cracking then. So
let's do it.
We look great there, don't we? So we've got I just like today.
Black and white, so forgiving.
Yeah, it's good, isn't it? You look great. I love
it.
You
do too,
babe. So in today's show, we are going to just talk really about the Sun opposition to Mars and also the Mars opposition to Pluto. Now, with these dates, if you look down here, this is a really intense area that we're going to really focus on from the 3rd of November 2024 to the 27th of April 2025. Because during that time, Mars is going to be in opposition to Pluto. If you think about it, Pluto is fannying around between two signs at the moment. He's like kind of foot in and foot out of between Capricorn and Aquarius. So right now he's in Capricorn. By the end of January, he'll be back in Aquarius. And I think he does it a second time, doesn't he, later on next year? During that time, we've also got the retrograde of Mars. And Mars doesn't go retrograde that often. It's every 2 years. So he's going retrograde at the end of December during that time, and then direct again in February, just before the end of this opposition. So we've got this very intense period at the end of next year and the beginning of 2025. So we're going to talk quite a bit about that. Now, we're not including much about the Mars and North Node aspects or the South Node aspects or the eclipses. We may well do something separately about that. But just
I think we will.
for anyone that's born, I'm going to give the actual dates out. But if you're born between the 17th and 26th of January, or the 16th and 25th of April, or the 20th or 28th of June, or the 19th and 28th of October, you'll have your sun in right at the tail end of the cardinal signs, or right at the beginning of the fixed signs. As you can see here, where all the action's taking place is in the beginning of Aquarius, Taurus, Aquarius. And obviously when Mars is in a square to Pluto, there's also a Scorpio, Aquarius, so Scorpio, Leo, Aquarius and Taurus all in the first few degrees, and then the Capricorn piece at the end of Cancer, the end of Cancer and the end of Capricorn. So all of these energies are really, really intense. If you've got a sun moon angle at 25 to 29 degrees at the end of a cardinal sign, so that's Aries, Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn, or 0 to 4 or 5 degrees of fixed signs, so that's your Taurus, Leo, Scorpio or Aquarius, this is going to be very intense. But anyway, do you want to tell us about start at the beginning, Alexandra?
Yeah.
Are you Alex, or do you prefer Alexandra?
Whichever comes. I don't mind. I really don't.
Okay.
I'm quite specific about it written, but not spoken.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's just like a really good place to just tune people into how these cycles work. All right, so we're going to rewind the clock back to the 8th of October 2021. This was when Mars and Sun came together in what we call a Cazimi or Cazimi, and this starts the new cycle of Mars. So essentially the old cycle is burned off in the heat of the sun, and Mars comes out of the furnace brand new and itching to do something new. Now, the downside with the last cycle, and it explains a lot about how life has been for a lot of people over the last couple of years, is that the cycle began in the sign of Libra, and Mars doesn't do so well in the sign of Libra. It's a Venus-ruled sign. And Mars rules the opposite sign, Aries. So it wasn't really the best place for Mars to start a cycle. Mars really wants to get something done. And when he's in the house of Venus, it's kind of like he's a bit henpecked, let's say, maybe. And the other important thing about that is that, therefore, the dispositor of Mars, the ruler of the sign, is Venus. So we had the Venus retrograde to go through as well as part of that Mars cycle. So Mars wasn't really able to do much Mars-y stuff, which is go, let's make something happen, let's move forward, let's initiate, let's start things, let's really have some action. The last couple of years, it's been a bit, I don't feel very effective. I can't move forward with the things that I want to move forward with. So if you feel like the last couple of years have been a bit like that, and I think there's been this whole sense of, maybe this is just the new normal post-pandemic, because there was a lot of talk about that, but I don't believe that for a second. I think that was more to do with the fact that Mars was sort of in this place of not really being able to be as effective at initiating new things as he likes to be.
Yeah. And Alexandra, you're saying like Venus was also in a Mars sign at the time of this Cazimi when it started. So Venus wasn't exactly herself either. It's interesting.
Well, I calculated that Venus was 0 degrees Sag.
Oh yeah, no, you're right. Actually, she is.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah.
I need to put my glasses on. I've got some new glasses. I'm a bit nervous about wearing them.
They pick
everything's
up the
reflected.
lights, don't they? Exactly.
Yeah,
It's
but
all for
also
voiceover.
it now actually looks too close. Yeah, I'll go with that. No, you're
But
right.
yeah,
She is
so
actually in the sign of Sagittarius. Yeah.
yeah, but there was that conjunction with the South Node, which again is like, it's not really to do with making something new happen moving forward. It's, oh, let's tidy up, let's clean up, let's, you know, release, let go. So it's been a very kind of ineffective Mars time. And I think that's why, you know, you mentioned earlier on, you feel like you've got to be in your bonnet and there's loads of stuff. You're almost like, a lot of people are chomping at the bit to just like, can we just get on now? Can we just put it all behind us and just get on? And that's what Mars is really going to help us to do, because the absolute contrast to this previous cycle is the new cycle that we're just starting. And it couldn't be more different. It's literally chalk and cheese. Which is very, very exciting. And so I would really encourage everyone to really get into this cycle and follow the whole thing and really do some work with it. Because obviously Mars is the ruler of the North Node now as well. So
yeah. One thing that, like in light of what you were saying, that, you know, we weren't able to get as much done. It's really funny because there was I had a couple of things I really, really needed to get done over the last 2 years. And I found 101 reasons not to do it, including not feeling. And already since we've gone into this next cycle, I'm already cracking on and actually doing it all.
yeah.
And I can't believe that the stuff of like 2 years just didn't get done. It was like, it was never going to happen. And I also recognize that it started in opposition to Chiron as well.
Yeah.
There was a lot of tenderness coming up, a lot of old stuff to be worked out.
Old wounds and
yeah,
that was where the Venus retrograde part of that, with Venus being the dispositor of Mars from the initiation of the cycle, you know, that was really, really key. That particularly in Leo, it was so much about self-worth and so much about, you know, letting go of those old wounds and learning to find what makes us shine again as individuals, you know, as independent individuals. And of course that involves us doing some of our work on where we need to heal and what we need to heal from. And there'll be more Chiron stuff with the coming Mars cycle as well, of course, because Chiron in Aries, it makes Mars the ruler as well there. So there'll be more Chiron work to do. Hooray.
Yeah, we'll definitely be looking at that. Like at the, do you want to go to the, is there anything else you wanted to say about this chart before we move on to the opposition?
No, it's essentially just saying, okay, here was our starting point. Think back in time, you know, what was starting around that time, wherever you have Libra in your chart. So for us Scorpio risings, Louisa, it was our 12th house.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was a time of finishing things, releasing things, letting things go, but also really getting in touch with parts of ourselves that perhaps we're not already familiar with.
I might just ruin this whole live stream, but I've got a mosquito I've got to squash. Missed it. No. Oh no,
that's so Marsy. I mean, a mosquito really is a Mars creature, isn't it?
Yeah, it's horrible. Right. Did you want to move on to the opposition?
Yeah. So essentially, if we're looking at the Cazimi point as being the new moon of the Mars cycle, then the peak moment, and we'll look at this in a little bit more detail with the hero's journey comparison, but so the peak moment is going to be the opposition when Mars is retrograde, and it's going to be that's kind of like the full moon point essentially. So it's like, this is what we're building up to. This is where the biggest challenge of this whole cycle is going to present itself to us. So again, if we think back to the last cycle, this was the point we arrived at in early December 22.
Yeah, in early December 2022. See, I like you, Alexandra, I had the Mars Cazimi sort of going through my 12th house here. And so lots of old stuff, in particular to do with healing and confidence and insecurities and fears and things that I hadn't already cleared. And, you know, just for transparency, I'm going through my Chiron return right now as well. So it was really kind of quite pertinent that I got it done. There were some things to do with my confidence with sisters and sisterhood and being good enough. And that came up to bite me on the bum around the 8th of December. So this sort of situation erupted out of what seemed like out of nowhere. And there was a friend.
She looks for Uranus. Uranus on our descendant. There was a lot of that going on, I think. Yeah.
Well,
from out of nowhere.
Yeah, really. With Uranus on my descendant. In fact, during this last 2-year period, and we've had Uranus on our descendant, I also had some stuff to do with 2 older women who were going through their Uranus return. And it just so happened that their Uranus return was in opposition to my ascendant. And their Uranus return was right on my descendant. And it was really, really painful. These 2 really old women in their 80s who I was lovingly looking after kind of turned on me after months of care. And then in the same 2-year period, somebody else that I'd been looking after and really doing my best for also turned on me. And you know,
people just do a 180 on you, don't they? Out of nowhere. Yeah,
definitely with Uranus on the descendant for sure. And it was such a shock. It's really appeared to come out of nowhere. And actually, what these 3 women have helped me do, they were the best teachers I could have had, because I've had to really toughen up, and I've had to really get. I realized with all 3 of them, I didn't really assert any boundaries. You know, my desire to care for somebody else was stronger than my need to care for me and my family. You know, I was almost putting more effort into looking after people who seem vulnerable.
And that would come back to your Chiron in the 6th house. It's like, I'm only worthy of love if I am healing everyone else, if I am of service to everyone else. Yeah. and Uranus will act as the great awakener. It will bring things into our consciousness very, very quickly. And like you, I've attracted people in during their Uranus opposition, and they've done a 180 and just lost it. And it's like, whoa. Or Uranus types, you know, Aquarian people. It's kind of like those planets moving through the 7th and across the descendant can really kind of call in the archetypes that you know, people representing the planets. I also think if you've got like your own Uranus in quite a strong position or quite a psychic position, it's almost like going to happen. It's almost like you're begging for it. Not that that's 12th house.
Like we've both got a 12th house Uranus, so it's almost like what we couldn't. Well, from speaking for myself, you know, the unconscious desire for change has always come to me through other people. You know, they've shown me where I've needed to change, where I've not been able to see it for myself.
And personal sacrifice. You know, the 12th house is the house of self-undoing and self-sacrifice. You know, and that's the thing. It's that your personal planet, our personal planet, Uranus, being in Libra, that was where the cycle started. So Uranus was always going to get pulled into it one way or another. And so this is the important things to consider when we're looking at this Mars cycle. What planets do you have in Scorpio? You know, what are the themes that are likely going to be pulled in? And that's the perfect example. Your Uranus position got pulled into this cycle because they all work together. Ultimately, it's like a big clockwork machine with the big cogs at the bottom being like the outer planets. And then they get smaller and smaller and smaller as we come closer to the sun. But they're all, and they look like they're all distinct and doing their own thing, and they are, but they're all connected as well.
That's a really great explanation. We've got Mona joining us from Colorado. Hi, Mona. Thanks for joining us.
Hello. Hi, Mona.
And Clarity of Tarot from Denmark is saying, the last 14 months, my son, sister, and mother have all turned on me, and I've cut all 3 out of my life. That must be so painful. it's representing the work that many of us are having to do right now, you know, in that need for self-care. Do you think there's going to be more of that coming up, Alexandra? You know, like
I
more
think
people...
there's going to be a lot of that, yeah, because, you know, just
Setting.
briefly going back to that concept of, you know, the new normal and coming out of the pandemic years, that this new Mars cycle is going to kind of pull us back into that a little bit. Unfortunately, we do have this situation where Pluto's in the middle of the old paradigm and the new paradigm, and we're not quite sure where we're at yet between the two, shuffling between the two. And this is the final year of working all of that out. And that's deep stuff. You know, it doesn't get any deeper than Pluto, except periodically when Neptune is deeper into space than Pluto. But essentially, for the large part, Pluto is that really deep stuff. And it's also the unconscious stuff, and it's generational stuff. It's stuff that themes that tie the whole world together, the whole planet together, particularly with the nodes being in square to Pluto now as well. We're all really feeling these times as being very Pluto-y times, death and rebirth. But it's been drawn out because Pluto really likes to draw things out, squeeze every little bit of value out of the whole thing. So yeah, but I think now we'll start moving. Sorry, I forgot what the original question was because I've rambled.
Like, no, it's fine. Do you think we're going to carry on having these sort of dissolutions of relationships? Because I'm actually quite hopeful that for those of us that have been facing ourselves and facing where we're in polarity and really not getting on with people and not being honored, and you know, I'm actually quite hopeful that where people have already started that process, that during this process, as we're getting clearer and clearer, we might actually be able to get back together or find a new position, find a new way to work together.
The new tribe, that's the thing. Yeah, it's kind of like the first step that you've got to do in deciding how you're going to do something new is almost to say, how do I not want it to look? I don't want it to look like the old world. I don't want, things aren't going to go back how they were, and perhaps they didn't ought to. But yes, I think Pluto has had this very polarizing effect, as it does always. It swings from one extreme to the other. So whether it's vaccination, anti-vax, whether it's Israel or Palestine, you know, whatever it is, you know, pro-life, exactly, you know, all of it, it's just these huge divisive experiences constantly, and we've really lost touch with actually what's really important, what's really important in the here and the now. And so we have got a lot of work to do on relationship, because the nodes are in Aries and Libra. We can't not be. But yeah, I think we've gone through a bit of a death and a rebirth as a collective, or we're in the process of that. And I think this particular Mars cycle is really going to be a death and rebirth process in terms of ourself and our own power and our own effectiveness. And I think there's a lot of people who are now feeling cut adrift. I don't fit here anymore. I don't belong there anymore. Where do I belong? I don't want to just be surrounded by AI and robots and talk to Alexa all day, you know, like I actually want some human beings in my life, and perhaps,
real people. It's
and perhaps all the divisiveness has just made that so flipping hard. So we've got to learn some new skills about how we relate, for sure.
What really occurs to me about the opposition that we faced, you know, what we needed to face in the last period, is that this, you know, at that opposition, it was also the day of the full moon, as you can see. And it was pretty much exact at the time of the opposition and the full moon. It was pretty much on it. But that there was this square, a T-square to Neptune, which was only ever going to fog it up and make boundaries really difficult to perceive. And if you think of Gemini and Sagittarius and just think typical third, ninth house issues, you know, we've had this polarity that you're talking about, where some people are like, facts, science, news, like this is what we're told, it must be true, this is a bona fide fact. And then there's all these people, these over here, who are the dreamers and context setters saying, hang on a second, where's the truth?
Bigger picture. Yeah.
So
Well, the whole time of the pandemic, we had the nodes in square to Neptune, and that and so the nodes were in Gemini and Sag, which is all about information. And you know, the Sagittarian piece on that is kind of, oh, let's gloss over all the fine details and just go global and just go big picture. And then Gemini is the opposite, which is like, let's drill down to every single, cross every T, dot every I. And the whole time they were in square to Neptune. So there was never going to be, until we came out of that period of time, we were never going to be clear about anything. The only time that we're ever going to be 100% is with hindsight. So what the information that's the most important is the information that's coming out now, because that's that's not guesswork, that's not ideas, theories, you know, this is a fact, this is what's happened. So we should be, this is the time when we should be getting most information, and actually we're not.
Yes, it's an interesting point. I like the what you said there about the nodes, and how it was in the square to Neptune, because you know, where we are right now is we've got this kind of T square node thing with Pluto, which is all obviously about the big shift. So should we have a look? So this is the Cazimi that we've just gone into last week on the 18th. And so the possibilities that we're seeding, I mean, it's such a great chart. I mean, I like it anyway. Even though it's got that opposition to Uranus. Actually, I'm quite used to that. It's just like, oh, hello, Uranus, my old friend. It just feels like something I know now. And actually, I like how the Uranus energy has really helped me to define where I need to be free, where I need to feel really, really free. And so I love this. I think a lot of people are going to be experiencing a race for freedom, and that could be a bit painful.
And that Uranus is the ruler of Aquarius. This is the land that Pluto is opening up for the next 20 years and saying, right, let's transform Aquarius. So Uranus is a big part of that, and we're going to see Uranus shifting into Gemini and making trines to Pluto further down the line. So it's nice to see Uranus's involvement there for sure. I think what excited me the most about it is, you know, that sextile to Pluto. That's both the rulers of Scorpio in harmonious flow. And guess when the peak of that sextile is? Right now, baby, as we are talking. Love it. Love the timing. So it's that, and I love a sextile because it's like, it's not lazy like the trine. It's an opportunity. And I always talk about the sextile as though, you know, when you make a charity donation and someone else matches what you've put in. That's how I see a sextile. It's like the universe is trying to bring something to us, but we have to meet it halfway. Then we get the trine. Then we get, it's half a trine, right? So it's that. We'll put in half the work. Universe will meet us halfway, and it's much more active. and it's much more active energy than a trine. Like a trine, everyone looks at trine. Oh, this is great. This is going to be wonderful. This is really lazy, and it's just like, it doesn't really stimulate anything. And we want stimulation with Mars. You know, Mars is about initiation, right? It's the ruler of the vernal equinox, when all of spring bursts into life. And you know, there has to be a bit of force. If you think of a seed, we plant a seed underground, and it has to have that struggle. It has to have that push to burst out of the casing and force its way up to the light. So you know, everything new has to have that bit of welly behind it. And so I loved seeing the sextile because it's got the welly, but without it being harsh like a square would be. It's got some stimulation. Yes,
it does. I really love it for very much the same reasons. I think it's also interesting, obviously, because like you say, Pluto is about to go into the sign of Aquarius as well. So it's so nice to see it just so connected. I do notice that the Cazimi is also in a square to Saturn. Because I always think, like, when you think of like the malefics, you know, the bad, you know, I feel quite sad for the planets to be called the benefics and the malefics.
Yeah, I don't like it. I refer to it as desirable and undesirable, but you know, asking a kid to eat Brussels sprouts, he doesn't want to eat them, but they're going to do him some good, so it's not a bad thing. You know, it's desirable and undesirable.
I mean, they can be strengthening, can't they? You know,
absolutely.
So I mean,
and I can tell you, with someone with Saturn, with Saturn sat on my sun right now, I can tell you there's a hell of a lot of strengthening going on. But it's really interesting because, you know, we had the great conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter at 0 degrees of Aquarius.
Yes, we did.
If we do
before that, we had before that we had Pluto, Saturn, and Jupiter all rounded up together at the time of the pandemic,
of the great unpleasantness, and but that 0 degrees of Aquarius is the place that Pluto is drilling down on right now. And so they kind of like, when Saturn and Jupiter start a new cycle like that, they're creating a whole new social cycle. Like how is social, putting down the framework essentially of the new way of doing things. And you'll notice that a lot of the infrastructure for the digital realm that we're moving into now was installed during the pandemic, when businesses were closed, when, you know, there was money from the government being thrown around left, right, and center to develop different things. So, you know, that Saturn Jupiter conjunction at that position was really, really important. So they, you know, we need to keep our eye on where they are in their connection to each other, as well as Pluto really works in that 0 degree Aquarius point. So and again, you know, so it's a square to Saturn. That's all that's saying is there's going to be some tension here. There's going to be a bit of friction. We need to anticipate that to a certain extent there will be limitations and authorities and rules and things that are potentially going to throw a hurdle up in front of, you know, Mars wants to just race down the track. There's going to be some hurdles, but that's cool. Mars can take it from Scorpio, definitely. I
think it's going to absolutely create a greater thirst for freedom, isn't it? You know, with this sort of tension here between Uranus and Mars, and then this sort of outside authority kind of saying, no, well, don't run too fast.
To me, the thing to me with any planet in Pisces, it's really asking, what's the meaning? What's the greater meaning of all of this? And I think that's a time, you know, we're entering a time now where the spiritual void within our lives couldn't be more gaping. Like, there literally isn't one in community. You know, people are turning their backs on religion. We see religion essentially being this kind of catalyst for so much that we don't want to be happening in the world. And Saturn's really exposing that lack of the spirituality, the sense of being connected. Neptune connects all. It knows that we're all, my good helps you, and when I do something for you, it helps me, because we're all connected. And Saturn's just really pushing that point and saying, you know, where have we lost that connection? Where is there a hindrance, or where's a wall in between us and that feeling that there's a purpose and a meaning in life that's bigger than buying a house and, you know, what I'm getting the kids for Christmas.
I love that. Let me just say hello to Janine. Hi. Where are you coming from, Janine? It's nice to have you here. Jasmine is joining us. Hello, my friend.
Hey, Jasmina.
Thank you. We'll be doing a show about well, we'll be hooking up with Jasmina soon. In fact, I'm going to be talking with her about next week, in fact. But hey, Jasmina, I hope you're well. We've got Makeup Therapy joining us as well, saying hi, everyone. Hello back.
Hello.
So, should we have a look at our greatest, like what we have to face in this scenario then?
Yeah, so this is so essentially what I would be advising people to do is looking at this chart is this is the starting point for the 2-year cycle. How it contrasts to that last cycle couldn't be more different because Mars is in its home sign. Mars is in Scorpio, and that's a completely different tone. It's basically saying, right, I can really, really, really do my thing here. And my God, has he been waiting a long time to do his thing? But where we potentially sometimes consider Mars to be a bit hasty, a bit rash, a bit impulsive, a bit headstrong, that's Mars ruling Aries.
Aries, yeah.
Yeah, this is Mars in Scorpio, and Scorpio,
a bit more cunning, isn't he?
More cunning, more tactical, but playing the long game. This is the territory of let's really work on things for the longer term. And so I don't think we need to worry too much about the headstrong aspects or the rushy aspects of Mars in this place. But also there's a lot of power in unconscious hands or in hands that want to bring out more of the shadow side or the less desirable side of Scorpio. It can be hugely destructive. And that's not necessarily a per se bad thing. You might want to destroy something, it might need destroying. But we just have to be really, really careful of, what the motivation is. And that's what Mars is all about. He's our motivation. Like, what are we going for? Why are we going for it? So this is the point. Look at Scorpio in your chart. Which house in your chart is occupied by Scorpio? That's the area of life that this cycle is starting at and saying, here, this is what's going to shift. And then when we move into the full moon, that's where the challenge is going to be.
And by the full moon
being the opposition. Sorry.
So no, that's fine. So when Alexandra's talking about the full moon, she's if we think of the Cazimi here as being the new moon, as Mars and the Sun come together, then the full moon is this opposition between the two. And so this is what we've got to face. This is our big challenge. This is the dragon that we might be slaying in this Cazimi period that's taking us until the beginning of January 2026. And so it's a full-on old opposition, and it's also it's almost
around the time with the opposition to the Sun as well. So it's the halfway point of the synodic cycle, which is essentially what we're looking at here, the relationship of Mars to the Sun. It happens to also be the opposition to Pluto as well. And you'll notice if we just rewound that moon in Leo, it's a full moon. And guess where the full moon is happening? We're going back into pandemic territory. We are going back and saying, all right, what did we learn about power? What did we learn about our ability to say no? And our personal power and that's going to be some of the challenges perhaps that we need to be facing, as we know. And Pluto really drags things up from the depths. It drains the swamp, exposes everything that we've hidden, everything that's been pushed away, everything that we've tried to brush under the carpet. Pluto's got this way of just exposing all of that stuff. So that's what we can anticipate happening in the opposition to Mars. Is going to be really, really exposing, our relationship to power, where we have it, where we don't. Powerlessness is a big Pluto Scorpio theme, and the vulnerability around the whole idea of power and powerlessness, and where we need to open up to being intimate in Scorpio. We have to have intimacy, and how that lays us bare to potentially, we put our trust in something and we have to open up, and that potentially means that we can be hurt.
Yes, I absolutely agree with you, especially so you're talking about the great vulnerability and the secrets. I mean, if I was seeing this and really focusing on this now, when I go back to this Cazimi, I'm thinking any secrets that we've got that we are, or any shames that we're holding, any old rubbish that we'd rather nobody ever find out. As I see that chart, I'm thinking, my goodness, it's probably better to, in the next year or so, to find a way to come clean, or find a way to put things right, or find a way to scrub it.
I mean,
because this is like at the opposition, it's in a T-square to Chiron. So, that's bringing up wounds. Wounds are plenty.
And also the south node of the moon is in the 12th house of the Cazimi, because it's in Libra. So, and that 12th house is that bit that we don't see. It's our blind side. It's our unconscious. It's hidden enemies. It's all the hidey, secrety places where we just go, oh, I need to dissociate from that. It can't be in my world. It's too uncomfortable. It's too wrong. It's too ugly. It's too dark.
You're
that's
right.
A big.
So this is going right the way through. You're right. Good point.
Yeah, and so it's about kind of like getting rid or having a big clear out of the unconscious. But that really is going to involve us. We talk about Mars and we talk about courage, having the courage to be really, really truthful, honest with ourselves. That's the key. With Pluto, you can't keep a secret from Pluto. It's going to expose everything. So we've got to be really, really honest with ourselves. That's where we're all, the theme that we'll all have in common wherever this is happening in our chart is that we really need to be honest with ourselves about it. And if that means looking at it and going, my motivation for achieving this thing is actually a quality that I don't think I want to be part of who I am anymore, then this is a time to work on, all right, how am I going to move from that motivation to something healthier or something more desirable?
Well, before we went live, we were talking about the nodes around this time. So according to whether you're using mean or true nodes, the nodes are literally between 0 point. So the North Node is at 0 point Aries to 29 degrees in the sign of Pisces, and vice versa. The South Node is at 0 Libra to 29 Virgo. So obviously it's going this way. So the 29 is what leads into the 0. But if you think about it, like the 29th degree is known as the anuretic degree. It's the degree where the energies are breaking down and aren't really like Virgo-like or Pisces-like. And you've sorry, it goes from 0. It goes this way, doesn't it? Not that way. Duh. But
we're moving into Pisces Virgo, but
sorry, but
by my calculations, this is at 0 Aries. The nodes at the point of the opposition, the nodes or the North Node ruled by Mars will be at the Aries point. 0 degrees Aries, that's effectively the start point of the entire zodiac. When the sun hits that point in March, that's the new year. That's the vernal equinox. It couldn't be more of an initiatory energy. So it's a hugely powerful moment. And the first thing that, the closest planet to the North Node is Neptune as well. And of course, this very degree will be the place that we are going to see Saturn and Neptune meet up at 0 degrees of Aries. So again, it's keeping that involvement of Saturn in there.
And that's in February 2026, isn't it? So like this Mars cycle is taking us until the 9th of January 2026. And then, the month after, like, you know,
Boom.
Alexandra was saying, we've got Saturn and Neptune. Yikes. And, you know, and then Neptune shortly after will be going into the sign of Aries. I mean, it's just really epic stuff. We are really going through a massive change.
And that's why this is so key to work with this Mars cycle, because this is the cycle that's bridging us from, okay, that big, massive stop point that was the pandemic, up until the new world that is being created, the phoenix rising from the ashes of that meltdown, essentially, to use the Pluto kind of metaphor. And so this is Mars saying, okay, all this stuff's been going on. What does it mean about you? How has it affected you? Who do you want to be in the new world? A new world, we are on the brink of a new world. And it's kind of like, what piece do you personally want to play in that? You know, do you feel empowered to play a part in that? Do you like the way that it's looking like it's going? Where can you carve out space for yourself within that bigger kind of system? Yeah, so this is such an important, it's just like getting your ducks in the row, ready for the new world. Essentially, we've got this last year of Pluto dithering. Yeah,
it's great.
Yeah, the Pluto dither finishes. Okay.
We've got some lovely comments coming in. So Janine is joining us from Belgium and still chewing on your excellent report, Louisa. Thank you so much. I remember who you are now. Yubinet is saying, my Mercury is in Scorpio. I always have my charts pulled up in my photos when you're on. Oh, that's such a great idea. What a great thing to do. Private Soul is fantastic, because Private Soul was actually waiting for us to come on like earlier today. So looking
sorry we were late.
So that's so nice. But Private Soul is saying, oh yes, saying no, a biggie and a work in progress. And this is lovely. Alex has an amazing way to articulate topics. You really do.
And Phoenix Rising. Oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah, isn't that
Phoenix
great?
Rising, baby. This is the time.
Yeah. Definitely. And you've been saying, interestingly, I've scheduled 2 weeks off the last week of December and the first week of January to spend time thinking of what I really want for myself. I'm checking stuff. That's just so beautiful. Yes.
So you need to be checking in with your chart and looking, where is Scorpio? That's where this started. And where is those late degrees of Cancer and Capricorn? How does that fit in with it? You know, how can you pull in the themes of whatever houses they are for you into the bigger picture of the Mars cycle, because that's where the tension's going to come. And you can think back and use the template of the previous Mars cycle that we've just gone through. So knowing it started in Libra, but the opposition point where we really had to face up to some stuff was across Gemini and Sag. Yeah. So have a think about that
as well, wasn't it? That must be near your moon.
It was second, 8th. So it's been this big kind of financial unpicking with my ex-husband, tied in with the Venus cycle as well. It's been in terms of the astrology, sublime. In terms of the life, hideous. But hey, you know, I live it so I can guide my clients better. What can I say? Everyone else will benefit.
Yeah. Do you know what? I love how you said that. And I am not without some skin in the game myself, I have to say.
I know, honey. I know.
In fact, you know, because obviously we've both got our Scorpio rising, so our houses are kind of similar. And you know, we're also born just a few months apart, aren't we?
Yes.
So like we are our charts have some quite big similarities.
Remarkable similarities, yes.
Yeah, they really do. But like this area here, like Alexandra was just saying, you know, between the end of Capricorn and the beginning of Aquarius and the end of Cancer and the beginning of Leo are huge, as we're about to find out, because are you ready now for us to have a look at the Mars-Pluto opposition?
Most definitely, yeah. Well, Oh, I see. That was the sun. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're so close together. But yeah, so this will be the time when we're going to go through Mars retrograde. That's the really key thing to understand about this transit. At the opposition point, it's when Mars is retrograding. And that's the kind of like the real, all right, I get it now. You know, the full moon of the lunar cycle, it's a real bugbear of mine that often it's presented as being that's the end, that's an end point. It's not. It's just
the middle.
Yeah, it's the middle, but it's the end of what we're trying to bring into being. All right. So the first half of the cycle is it's waxing, it's trying to make something become. And so we can apply the same to this as well. You know, this is what it's trying, what is the Cazimi leading us into? And the retrograde is that part where it's like, okay, I've had my feedback session. I call the full moon feedback session. It's like, here's what you've produced. Could be good, could be bad, whatever. And then we have to like chew it over and go, all right, what bits of it are nourishing and helpful and supportive for me to move forward with, and what do I need to leave behind? And so similarly here, when Mars is retrograde, it's kind of like, all right, I need to understand what my motivations have been and why. Have I been motivated by fear, by conditioning, by society, by my Chiron wounds? You know, Mars is the dispositor of Chiron for all of the Chiron and Aries people of our age. You know, where are my motivations actually motivated by a core wound of not being good enough? So that's the level of self-honesty that we need to get into. And then we can say, do you know what? I don't want to be that person anymore. I'm letting that go. That's what the retrograde's all about. I've decided I'm not going to be that person anymore. I'm going to be this person now. So this is such an important part of the cycle.
Yeah,
really exciting.
So just before we move on, let me just show you quickly. So on the 6th of December 2024, so, you know, we've still got a whole year to go, but, you know, we like to get things, you know, we're trying to sort of give you an idea for this whole cycle. Mars is going to go retrograde at 6 degrees in the sign of Leo, so just around here. And Mars is going to go all the way back to 17 degrees in the sign of Cancer before going forwards again. Now, if you've got something in this area, it's going to be very, very sensitive, because as you'll see in a minute, we've got like, so this is the Sun and Mars opposition, and see Pluto's in place down here. We're going to have a look at the Mars Pluto opposition, and there's two of them coming up. Essentially, Mars is in opposition.
There's three with the retrograde.
Okay. So it's starting around the 3rd of November, and then we've got this on the 27th of April, and I've missed one out. But
so the dates for the Mars opposition Pluto are the 3rd of November, 25th of January, and then the 27th of April. Right. And that's gonna be those moments of literally death and rebirth of my power, my relationship to power, my motivation, what I'm trying to make happen, my will. So they're really important.
Very, very intense time. So the chart we were just looking at, Sun opposition Mars, is right in the middle of this whole period. But essentially, this period is one of massive, massive change. So if you are using this Cazimi to like rework your life, then you need to build in some resources, or think about how, sorry about my noisy kids in the background, you might want to think about how, like, what resources you've got ahead of time. And you know, this is
that's time the whole point.
It's us putting up our big girl pants, pulling up our socks, rolling up our sleeves and go, okay, I can't put this off anymore.
Bring it on.
And often, bring it on. And often, you know, I really think with Pluto, when we realize and we accept, and when we surrender actually and say, okay, actually there's a point here. I need to stop fighting on this one, because I'm actually digging myself a bigger hole. You know, when we're able to accept a few things, I think we can then start to really move on and transform. It's going to kick our ass, I think.
I think it's going to kick our ass, but in a way that we really need our asses kicked. For those of us who actually want to be in the driving seat of our lives, like for the non-passenger people, which is typically the people who are drawn to astrology and self-understanding and self-growth, that's why it's so empowering as a tool. You know, it's really about, okay, I know I have some influence on my life and I want to make the most of what I've got. You know, that's really important. I just had another thought and it's disappeared, which is very annoying. Oh, I know. I just wanted to mention, if you know you've got your Pluto square coming up this year, for those, now my brain's going to freeze around the ages of people who are coming into their Pluto square, but hopefully you'll know.
What, in the late 30s, is that?
Yeah, mid to late 30s. If you're going through it's going to be a biggie for these guys too. Yeah.
Good point. Okay, let's have a look at this last chart then. So this is Mars Pluto opposition, and this is where we really need to look for strength, but also like really sort of build our strength in, have some strategies up our sleeve, and also I think it's important not to take things too personally, because, you know, this, like Alexandra said at the start, you know, the Pluto, like Mars is a personal planet. So, you know, we can easily grasp the idea of our motivations and stuff. But Pluto is really about the collective and the collective stuff. If we think about, you know, we're all going about our business, we're all trying to make our way in life. You know, if all of us are energized at the same time, and if a lot of us are starting to really move forwards and stuff, there's going to be lots of people bumping into each other. It's going to get a bit dicey for a while. And I think it's kind of like he who dares wins. So
there'll be a lot of battles. There'll be a lot of battles of will. Yeah. You know, I want this. And the problem with Pluto is, essentially Pluto is like Mars on steroids. It's just like a massive, much more powerful version of Mars. And Mars is like, what do I want? What do I want to make happen? What do I want to get? I'm going to go out there and I'm going to get it. Pluto's like that, but he's like, and I will stop at nothing until I've got it, you know, and that's where the ruthlessness of Pluto comes in, that I will not give up until I've got what I want, that can really get a bit twisted. And this is where we have to be very clear and honest with ourselves about our own motivations, because Pluto will dredge up aspects of ourselves that perhaps we haven't seen before. But really how I want to angle this is being the pioneers of change. You know, the world is turning into a vastly, vastly different place than it was before. And Pluto represents change. It represents the death and rebirth. And it represents this whole new chunk of, you know, we're going to have the next 2 decades of Pluto in Aquarius. It's like and that's the sign of humanity, the sign of the tribe, the sign of the coming together of people. How do we as Mars individuals want to be the pioneers? How that, you know, the firebrands, the people that lead the way in making that change happen, but change in a radically real and truthful way that isn't, you know, I think the one thing that we all agree on with Scorpio is it doesn't do bullshit. It doesn't do superficiality. It doesn't do anything on the surface level.
So
and people
real.
are tired. People are so tired of the bullshit now. Whatever it is they see as being the bullshit doesn't really matter. It's just like there's a collective need for truth. And I think that's what Pluto can deliver. We just have to be prepared for the fact that the truth isn't always pretty.
Yes.
Nothing about Scorpio is awfully pretty.
Yeah,
but
I want to ask you, at the same time as we've got this opposition, we've also got Venus and Jupiter in exact opposition as well.
Yeah.
Interestingly. So we've got like two difficult sort of like less desirables or slightly you need to work quite hard with two benefics in opposition. And where they're in opposition is reminiscent of the Gemini full moon.
Yes, that's coming up.
Yep.
We've got a Gemini full moon coming up, haven't we? I mean, hard aspects between Venus and Jupiter aren't a biggie.
But it's in the same place. It's just 4 degrees difference from the Gemini full moon from the previous Sun Mars opposition.
Yes, so absolutely.
May well bring up some of the shit that hit the fan back then. Some of those old
and also, I noticed Venus in Sag. That's where she was at the beginning of that previous Mars cycle was too. Interestingly, but I think really with Venus in Jupiter's sign opposite Jupiter, the worst that we can do there is get a bit carried away with how much pleasure and niceness that we want. And of course, you can't talk about Mars and Pluto without talking about sex. There's going to be people's libidos are going to be getting stirred after potentially a while of them not being awfully dynamic. This next cycle, and people may have really felt that actually with the Cazimi, like, having that desire, the stoking the fires of desire.
I didn't notice this before, but you got a mystic rectangle formation as well at the time of this.
Nice.
Because we've got Uranus and Mercury in opposition, Uranus and the Moon in opposition. So there's a lot of oppositions, but with that, it's bringing a lot of style, relatedness.
The oppositions will typically play out in relationship with other people, where we're seeing a lot of oppositions going on, and of course we're expecting to have to do work on relationship with the nodes being in Aries and Libra. But that's where it's happening. So we know that we're moving into relational times, and again that ties in that whole desire and sex aspect of things. How are we doing it? How are we doing it? Does it need to change? I think most people would agree that the way we're doing relationship definitely needs to change. And perhaps also sex too. Perhaps there's too much raw realness about sex these days. Perhaps there's not enough mystery. With Scorpio, there's the veil, the mystery. There's something that's hidden. That's where the allure is, that the veil across the face, and it's in the revealing that's the tantalizing part. But there's always something that's kept behind, and I think we've moved into times when everything's out there. It's just kind of like, okay, there's no mystery left. Like there's no. It's almost like there's no foreplay to relationship anymore. It's like, boom, we're straight in there. We know what we're getting, everyone's and that's really sad too. So I think we're going to be working with our sexual energy quite a lot as well.
I love that extra bit of interpretation there. Is there anything else you wanted to touch on with any of these charts, or should we just kind of round things up now?
I mean, I think this is a perfect opportunity if our viewers here, or if you're watching this later on, if you really want a kind of a template, we are going to be doing an experiment with applying, if anyone's familiar with Joseph Campbell's monomyth or the hero's journey formula, it is often applied to Mars cycles in astrology. And did you prepare some slides on that one?
No, but
no.
Well, I'm going to bring up an image of it because I think that's worth doing.
Might be helpful. And so what I thought might be really interesting to do is actually just let's test this out. Where at the start of a Mars cycle, let's apply the hero's journey principles to it, and let's follow it through together. And for anyone that's really interested in going deep into this cycle, it'll help keep us tuned in, because obviously a lot's going to happen in 2 years. Let's keep revisiting this cycle, because it's not just a thing. There was the Cazimi, that's done, it's finished, and then, you know, an abstract, another Mars aspect will happen somewhere down the line. It's let's really encourage people to start working with the full cycle, and this might help us to do that. And it might be really interesting just to test out that theory of, does it work? Does the hero's journey formula work with the Mars cycle? I think it would be, for my own purposes, I think it would be really interesting.
Yeah.
And if nothing else, it helps us, it'll help us get the most out of the Mars cycle.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a couple of final things coming in, including a question, actually. Chantal Marshall is saying, what do you say about my Pluto and Chiron conjunct in the 6th house? She's then later shared that it's in Scorpio, and also the sun is in here. May I just say thank you so much for sponsoring the show tonight. Thank you so much for your donation. That's really kind. So can you tell me about my Pluto and Chiron in the 6th house? Also, the sun is here in Scorpio. So
so your Gemini rising then on whole sign system. Sorry, Louisa, did you want to say something? Sorry.
No, I think that's a great. Do you know what your star? Do you know what your ascendant is, Chantal? Do you use whole sign? It's Gemini. It sounds like it should be Gemini, doesn't it? What I would like yes, I'm Gemini rising. Okay. Yeah. I'm going to just bring up an old slide. Just wait with me. Do you want to talk, Alexandra?
Yeah, so I didn't catch the degrees, Chantal, that are involved there, but it really doesn't matter. So what I would be looking at is, okay, this is the 6th house of my chart. So this is where I'm initiating something new. What am I initiating that's new? It could be my daily routine. Is it working for me? Is it supporting me in what it is that I want to be achieving out there in the world? Is it keeping me healthy? So have I got a nice kind of Virgo-y setup going on, where I get up at the same time and I do my yoga and I brush my teeth and boom, boom, boom. So am I looking after myself? Because also the thing with sun in the 6th house, irrespective of what the sign it is it's going to have a bit of a Virgo-y tendency, which is, you know, use me and abuse me, like I'm here to serve you kind of thing. So there may be aspects of that need adjusting essentially with this. So it's gonna work you, and it's going to work those planets. So you need to consider also, what are the houses in your chart that are ruled by, well, not Chiron, but the sun, and Pluto obviously is Scorpio. So where is Leo? How did you find the Venus retrograde in Leo? How did you do some work there? And then, of course, Mars retrograde coming up. So look at those themes and how they're going to build into it as well, because your sun will end up getting pulled into this story, and that means the house that your sun rules will as well. So wherever Leo is in your chart, so you'll have had some tidbits of information from the previous Mars cycle as to where you need to be doing your work with your sun.
I think that's lovely what you've just shared there. So here's a little graphic I made last week. So for a Gemini ascendant, the old Cazimi was in 15 Libra, and then now it's here, and it starts in Scorpio, and like so, we've got this Capricorn energy as well going on.
So you've got your work house of the 6th, and then you've got the 2 financial houses is where the opposition is going to take place. So your Cancer Capricorn are in the 2nd and 8th house. So this may actually end up being something that's more about work than health in actual fact. because it's going to be 8th house, other people's resources, money that I get in from outside of myself. 2nd house is, where do I earn money for myself? How do I stand on my own 2 feet? And how does that tie in with then, you know, what I now need to make an alteration to, essentially. And with your Leo being 3rd house, it may come back to negotiating skills. That's a real key thing with the 3rd house. You know, 3rd house Gemini, you're a Gemini rising, it's haggling, it's bartering, it's the marketplace, buying and selling. How can I negotiate perhaps better financial terms, or, you know, how can I negotiate things better at work? Sorry, I just, yeah, go for it, Louisa. Sorry.
Well, first of all, no, it's great. First of all, I was going to say, I've done a video about the generation that have got Pluto and Chiron in a conjunction, because and in it I look at because a lot of people born with their Pluto and Chiron conjunction come from parents who were born in the mid-60s with their Pluto Chiron opposition. So, you know, often we see these healing patterns repeat, but I explore that in quite some depth, so it's worth having a good look at that. But in your 6th house, I mean, it's pretty intense. I mean, both Alexandra and I have got our Chiron in our 6th, and for me, and maybe for you as well, Alexandra, I've noticed that when you know, like the 6th house is about our day-to-day and how we live our life, and it sort of also has our health, and it also has our work. For me, I've noticed that the kind of life that is narrative, you know, like where I've been told, you know, how I'm supposed to work Monday to Friday in an office, you know, have weekends off and stuff. All of that kind of normality has never worked for me. In fact, when I've been normal, I've got ill. And so I've had to work quite hard at my life to really create a life that really suits me. And I noticed with Pluto in the 6th as well, sometimes people have a sense of difficulty around getting the balance right with their flow in their life. And so I think it's probably going to take quite a while to really understand what your particular flow is, how you make life work for you.
I recommend what will be the time will be, and this is being awakened now, but when you come into your Pluto square, as we move forward through Pluto and Aquarius, you know, the minute a planet enters a sign, it's going to wake up anything that's going to be aspected and worked on. You know, Pluto ingressed and it's moved back. It will have still woken up those planets that you have in the 6th house and said, hey guys, heads up, we're going to be working together, whether you like it or not. So you'll have had a bit of a taste of it already. If you think back to the times around the ingress, that might be helpful for you just to prepare for the Pluto square. But you know, the Pluto square for you guys, I think it's going to be great because you got domiciled Pluto. You know, that's really, really helpful. I'm very excited to see that generation come through and see what they make of their Pluto square, because that to me is that key turning point in life. That's when it all changes, you know, and it's kind of like, I've got to go through a personal death and rebirth. And that could very, very well be linked to your health, with Chiron, and Chiron being in the 6th house. Certainly was for me. I had to give up the old career and the old ways of working, because it, like you, Louisa, it made me sick, like literally. But that was also part of my Chiron journey. And you might find this too, with the Chiron piece for me is, you know, where do I feel that I have to overcompensate because I'm just not as good as other people? So wherever Chiron is in your chart, that's what it's indicating. So if it's in the 6th house, it's, I've got to work 10 times as hard as anyone else, else I'm not good enough. Or I've got to serve other people constantly. It's very people pleasy. It's very much a case of, I'll be a doormat. How would you like me to lie down for you, kind of thing. So if you've got any of that going on, time for a rethink, 100%. Yeah, thanks for giving us the opportunity to use your chart for that. That's really helpful.
Yeah, I also think it's worth noting that when Pluto goes into the sign of Aquarius, at some level, Pluto is also going to go into a trine with your ascendant. And I've noticed that is like a time of really moving forwards, you know, like where you're able to really start to feel like you're in the right place at the right time in a really sort of transforming way.
And of course, Uranus will be going across your ascendant in Gemini. That's probably not going to be too dissimilar in timing. So you've got a really exciting chunk of your life coming up, really exciting. Yeah. And so I would be using this cycle, you know, to really like get your ducks in a row.
One last thing that occurs to me. Now, I don't know what degree your Chiron and Pluto and Sun are in the sign of Scorpio, but like next year, we've got this huge Jupiter-Uranus conjunction at 20 or 21 degrees something.
Yeah.
21 degrees. And it's in your 12th house. And that could already be in opposition to, in fact, like with the spread of
Jupiter will be.
Yeah, like where Jupiter is here and then Uranus is here right now, like wherever your Pluto, your Sun and Chiron are, they're going to be in aspect with one of these guys because they're pretty much, you know, like covering, like, well, they're equally spaced. So, you know, they're going to be in opposition with some of these things. So one of the things that I noticed, because I've got a 12th house Uranus, is when I have my Uranus opposition, and I also have my progressed moon on Uranus. I had a lot of really shocking realizations about myself. Lots of stuff from the unconscious coming up, and it was really healing, but it was really quite shocking at the same time. And of course, Jupiter really emphasizes things. Like Jupiter is really good at making great, benevolent and optimistic, and you know, he's very much about well-being, but Jupiter also inflames things.
Just expands everything. Yeah.
So like if there's something you're wanting to hide or something you're uncomfortable about, it could expand it. So when we were talking earlier about, you know, the power of what's being revealed right now and our need to make sure we live sort of like secret free, one of the things that we were like, you were talking about, Alexandra, when you were talking about this like new potential for us all to have a new life, but also that the world is changing. One of the things that I always think of Scorpio as a bit like one of these old movies, these like gangster movies, you know, where people have things over you, you know, where people buy you, where you support. And I really see this as a time when we cannot be compromised. So I think we've all got a time ahead of us where we can absolutely free ourselves from being compromised in some way. And so I would really advise you to make sure anywhere where you feel like you could be compromised, just to clear it so that nobody's got anything over you, so you can
particularly with particularly with Jupiter being the ruler of your 10th house. That's your most public area of life. That's where people see you, and that's where your reputation and your status is. I think that's quite an exciting opportunity, but it's certainly something to be aware of, that, you know, it could, from the 12th house is where we can have hidden enemies and things that can like bring us down. So yeah, just watch for that. And be careful who you associate with. You know, Jupiter is the ruler of your 7th house of relating as well. So, you know, just be careful of who it is that you're associating with, and where that might impact your reputation and status, which is a conversation that's come up a few times today, actually. But your chart's the perfect example. Yeah.
And like I really like what you did there, linking in the Uranus Jupiter conjunction that's coming up to the 10th house and the 7th house, because it's very easy to go all doom and gloom on the 12th house, but it's also a very magical place of inspiration. Really and intuition, and like, I love the phrase, I quite like access consciousness, and I really love the phrase, what if the wrongness of you is the rightness of you? You know, so like all these things we hide under the rug because we might be ashamed of them, there's actually a lot of wealth and richness there. And so I really see that this area here which we might hide, could actually be the key to something really amazing. So
Absolutely.
I think you've got a very powerful chart at the very least. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that, Louisa. 100%. I couldn't agree more. I mean, there's so many people, so many incredibly famous people who have their sun in the 12th house. Madonna
Oh
is
my
the
goodness.
perfect example.
So much more is hang on. I've got to share some of these comments. It's lovely. You guys rock. You're so nice. So Private Soul said, yes, well done, ladies. You were both great. Thanks. Chantal Marshall is saying also conjunct Pluto and
you are
Chiron.
too. Okay. Yeah. You guys are going to rock. You've got some medicine for the world, you Pluto Chiron people. Yeah. You really have big, powerful medicine.
I mean, I really love the fact that, you know, we get to help bring on other. I wish I'd met older women, you know, like some really good peers, because I really feel for people who are like a decade or two younger than us, because they're inheriting. They've got a lot on their plate. Yeah. You know, and you guys are going to be actually helping to run the world that my children are growing into. So I really respect you.
I want you to be really good people. I tell you what we don't have in life right now is role models.
Yeah.
I think Chantal just mentioned there's something about hearing that the conjunction was bad. Just don't even go in the good bad thing. It's nonsense. Yeah. It's a merging of those energies. What could be better energies to merge than the power of magic? Pluto is magic. It's transformation. It's death and rebirth. It's the phoenix that rises from the ashes. Yes. What could be better to have alongside Chiron in terms of the power, the potential power of healing that you people have? You know, it's incredible. And yeah, it's going to involve some hard work. Sure, of course it is. But like, we didn't come to planet Earth just to kind of, you know, have a nice time and then die. You know, we came here to grow and learn.
No, really.
We'll leave that to the Venus-Jupiter opposition.
You're so right. Thank you, lovely ladies, and good night, everyone.
Good
thank
night,
you. Chantal saying that's true for me. I'm an unhealthy perfectionist workaholic. I have many allergies. I've had two big
Forgivers Anonymous is Chiron and Six.
Yeah. I think we've both been diagnosed with ME, haven't we, or chronic fatigue syndrome. I have. I put my hand up to that. I've managed to manage mine. That's what I know about my placement. I feel the sixth energy house very intense. I really think the sixth house could really, you know, when it's not working very well, I think it can get a bit like those mystery really illnesses that people don't know. You know, how doctors 100%. Say, oh, yes, it's made up or whatever. And Chantal is also, if you just give us some more money, thank you so much. Jupiter and Saturn in the 12th house in Taurus. Oh my goodness.
Wow. So you're going to have a Jupiter return, honey. That's good. You're going to level up. We love those Jupiter returns. You should be. Be excited.
Yeah, well, with this leveling up, actually, that's one thing I wanted to say with like our Pluto, like Pluto right now is in the sort of like nodal T square. You know, that is all about stepping up, isn't it? And leveling up. You're like, because you can't carry on. You kind of have to transform from the past.
Something's got to change. Yeah. But on a fundamental level, on a core, what is my core truth? You know,
here we go.
That's really what we're talking about. Something about my core truth has to fundamentally change in relationship to, you know, motivation. I keep coming back to this word, but that's what Mars is. He's Mr. Motivator. It's like, you know, he's just just imagine Mars as being like a soldier and he's waiting for orders. You know, you've got to tell him, I want you to go out into the world and make this happen. So you have to be very clear on what it is that you're asking Mars to go out and make happen for you and why. And that's the problem with Pluto, is Pluto can be quite dark, quite manipulative, quite controlling. You know, there's going to be some darker sides. But in that darkness, and this is where I think that the Pluto Chiron conjunction people will be brilliant. You know, in that darkness, there is so much treasure that you just wouldn't find otherwise. You know, there's so much. We talk about the shadow side of something like it's a bad thing. It's not. It's just a part that we were unable to access, a bit like the 12th house. But there's some really great resources in there. But we won't access those resources unless we're forced to really dig deep. And that's what Pluto does. He forces us to dig deep and get right back to our core truth. That's what he's going to strip back all the layers of bullshit, all the fillers and Botox and makeup and all of that bullshit. He's going to strip all that back and go, actually, what's the truth of who you are? Yeah. And that's the key. And so, and that's really an important journey with that Pluto Chiron stuff, because Chiron is a coping strategy. It's that coping strategy of, I've got to survive as a person. How on earth am I going to do that when I'm so broken and rubbish, essentially? And that's not the truth. That's not the truth at all. That's an idea that's been created in us through an experience we had when we weren't able to bring more life experience and understanding and knowledge. You know, it happens when we're children. And so having that ability to not only transform it, but to alchemize this, especially, you know, talking Gemini rising, the alchemists, you know, how can we turn lead into gold? And in terms of our healing, and that healing that is then going to go out into the world. Sixth house, this is my offering as my service to humanity, what I'm putting out there from the sixth house, and that's medicine. And this is so powerful.
I mean, you're right. Like so many. I mean, first of all, thank you for sending us your degrees. And yes, Uranus is in opposition to your Sun right now. Is also in opposition to your Chiron right now, and Jupiter is in opposition to your Chiron and your Pluto right now. So this is a really, really strong time.
I love Jupiter Chiron because they're both centaurs, so they've got a lot in common with each other, and they're both teachers. So this is really, 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 what is this teaching me? Just remember that. What's it teaching me?
Yeah. So thank you so much for that. Mirroring what Alexandra was saying about Chiron, I always I noticed lots of people with Chiron the 6th work as healers, and lots get there because of their own healing journey. I mean, both you and I mean, we're healing through the planets, and like, I mean, when I look at astrology, I think it tells us our story. It tells us the story we might hold about ourselves. And when we start using astrology, we realize we can play with our story, that our story isn't necessarily fixed, that we can have some fun. And then when we realize that we can play with our story, we can actually transcend our story. You know, we can actually create a whole new one because we can really play with the aspects. And so I like to think that, you know, we can use astrology to lose the illusion of us being weak. You know, that we
can... absolutely. And also bearing in mind the polarity point to Pluto, the Pluto polarity point. Sixth house stuff is, I've got to get everything perfect, everything's got to be right, everything's got to be really serious. And Pisces 12th house, it's like, worry about it. Like, this is just one lifetime. You're going to come back a million times. Don't even worry about it, you know. It's that kind of like that, you know, let's just scope out of here right now. If you don't do that thing right next Wednesday, chances are, on a soul level, you're going to be just fine.
Yes. And do you know what?
Virgo in sixth house stuff can take itself awfully seriously.
Yes, it can. I'm feeling the need to wrap this up now. I'm really enjoying this.
I think we're there.
I think we should just get together another time and have a lovely chat. It's been lovely joined by you guys. So Private Soul is saying amazing channel. Thank you very much. Chantal's
also a hypochondriac. Yeah.
Me too.
Listen, just a shout out there, if anyone is really interested in working with this Mars cycle on a deeper level and checking in at those key points where it mirrors with their hero's journey, I think, Louisa, maybe you can put a link up or something where we can pull that together if people are interested.
Yep. Yes, I'll set up an email group. So if you're interested, I will put an email. There is an email down below already. Just, let me know that you'd like to work with us in a group, and I will put us all together. And maybe do a professional link as well at some point. Chantal is saying, or something's wrong, but you haven't found it yet. Private Soul meant to write amazing chant. Amazing Chantal. Your reading. Private Soul is saying, I'm at the moment going through a massive change and stepping into purpose, and also doing more self-care and pause time that I haven't had for years, bringing creativity to the fore. And Pisces and Gemini rising.
Pisces Sun, so you've got Saturn going on. Yeah. It's hard work, and absolutely pause.
We've both got a lot of. I've got my moon and Jupiter and Ceres and Juno in Pisces. So I'm going to get walloped by Saturn soon. And you've got your sun there, haven't you, love?
I'm Sun 0 degrees. And my IC and my Venus, Jupiter. So yeah, I literally every decan is covered. I've got beginning to end, boom. But do you know what? That's the thing. It's like understanding what is the motivation of Saturn. What's it trying to do for us? Yeah, it's going to be tough. Fine, we're not going to get away with that. But let's make sure that we help it to achieve what it is that it's trying to achieve. It's not just to kill all the fun and make life really hard for no reason. That's Pisces. Yeah.
So Private Soul is saying she's got her North Node at 0 degrees Aries.
Whoa.
Sorry, Private Soul, I've just assumed you're a woman there. So if I no
so nodal return for you, my love.
Yes. Yeah. So there is the nodal return.
Powerful.
And Chantal is just saying Uranus and Neptune in the 9th. What can you tell me about that? I also have my MC in Aquarius. I always had the feeling to change the world. I'm sick of the bad things happening. Yeah, you're one
the
of
bad things aren't always that bad though, are they? And I love Uranus, Neptune, and in the 9th. I mean, wow, what a visionary person you are. That's going to like really push the realms of possibility. And that's the thing. There can be so much frustration with how the real world is when you have that ability to see the potential of how things could be. It's like, oh my God, why are we doing this ridiculous, pathetic stuff that's so beneath us when the world could be so wonderful? So I feel your pain as a Pisces, but it's not necessarily that bad things are happening. I think we just have to have another look at our expectations of what the process of life is. And this is Saturn in Pisces right now is really drilling us down and saying, what's the point? Where is the meaning in life? We have to have that meaning. And for me and for you with the 9th house, it's learning. It's going on the adventure of life and sucking it dry of everything that it can teach us, because it's teaching your soul. And that's the only part of you that's going to go on beyond this lifetime, which is what Neptune rules, the continuous journey of the soul. So that's the bit you get to take with you. So I would suggest that's the bit that we should all be focusing on the most.
Yeah. I mean, bless you. I mean, you've got your opposition in between your Sun, Pluto and Chiron here to your Jupiter. And was it Saturn? I can't remember. And then you've got Uranus and Neptune here, all in square energy. This is a really, really catalyzing time. When Pluto comes over this, like Alexandra was saying earlier, I mean, you are of a really sort of like dynamic generation, and like the full extent of what you're here to do just hasn't revealed itself yet. And I think it's really important to just understand you probably won't have all the answers just yet, probably not for a while, but everything that you're going through right now, all of your experiences, all the things that you're experiencing through projections, through outside influences because of all those outer planets and the meaning that you're making them have, it's all part of your development, and it will all reveal itself. It will through. No, go on.
I was just going to say the Pluto square and the Neptune square transits that are so key, that they really are what opens up. You know, we look at the midlife transits as sort of like this point in the middle where it's like, okay, I've lived the first half of my life a certain way. Likely the majority of that has been unconscious and conditioned. And this is kind of like the awakening of the self. And that idea of, okay, how do I want the second half of my life to look, and therefore what needs to change? And there's a lot of energy in your chart, a huge amount of energy. And with that T point being in the 9th house, that's there's a lot of information to be transiting out into the world, publishing, teaching, you know, traveling. And Uranus is, you know, it's great. I think you have a very exciting chart, and transits, your Pluto square and your Neptune square are probably going to come quite tight together. I would really work closely with an astrologer at that time to get the most out of it. But it's very exciting, because that's the time where you get out of the passenger seat and you get into the driver's seat, and you're going to go, right, second half of my life, I own that. What am I going to make of it? And you know what cards you're playing with, because you know your chart.
Her chart gets even more interesting here, because I always found it crazy that me, my brother and my mum also have the same moon sign, Leo. Well, first of all, that's the other fixed sign. So this is going to be a really, really interesting one. Your moon that's setting it all off. But actually, that's really not unusual. Me and my sister both Pisces moon. I've got 2 Pisces moon children. My mum's a Pisces. I've got a child with Pisces ascendant. You know, family patterns, they play out again and again and again. We are going to have to wrap this up now, because
we are, my love.
Tuck them into bed a little bit later. But thank you so much for answering my questions. I love you both. We love you too. Thank you so much, Chantal and Private Soul and Nubianette and Janine and Makeup Therapy. And we've had lots of people join us, and Jasmina and the Charity of Tarot and Mona. We've had so many people join us today. It's been really, really lovely to chat with you all and to hear parts of your story, and hopefully I'm almost destroying my keyboard there. And Alexandra, thank you so much as well.
Thank you.
So much, and I just absolutely love working with you. It's amazing.
I do too. I couldn't say better myself. And it's going to be really interesting to stay tuned into this cycle and get in there at those key moments with it and keep it alive and keep working with it. I think it's going to be really exciting, because I think it's really important. It's very empowering.
It's empowering. And I'd love to see you all here in a couple of years' time saying what the hell we did with it. That would be really tricky. Exactly. With a glass of wine as well. Right.
Oh yeah.
All right. I'm going to head off to bed now, but thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you'll join us another time as well. So lots and lots of love to you all. Bye for now.
Bye.